Tracks. Night Tracks. Night Tracks. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Night Treks here on Strange Journeys podcast. Tonight, we return to the state of Kansas as we look at the dark history and the events that may have occurred, particularly dealing with Samuel Jones, a longtime sheriff of Douglas County, and later a man known as the Hangman in Galena, Kansas, far to the southeast. In the course of his life, he would execute a total of 41 men, all with rope that he had tied himself, taking the time to braid the hemp until it held the strength that would be able to hold a human body. What happens, though, is a bit of a mystery. Samuel Jones's body disappeared. No one knows for sure where he's buried, if he was buried in Galena, if he was buried outside the city. Perhaps he had returned to Missouri. In the 1980s, a group of 4 men went out hunting for his body inside the city of Galena. They had attended a ghost hunt the night before, listening to the stories, enjoying the tales, enjoying the chance to hunt for ghosts. They were hoping to glean some kind of information about what had happened to Samuel Jones. The next night, however, they sat in a local bar, disappointed. They had found no grave site, no area that he could have been buried. Instead, they thought they would drown their sorrows. They were joined with 2 other men, an older man they had met on the street, and another man that had been on the same ghost tour with them the night before. And there they sat, drinking their beers. The one called Jared, the leader of the group, the most outspoken. A heavier set man complained, "After all, what good is a tour if you don't learn anything new? It's just like every other tour. The ghost stories are all the same. The ghost that lives in the cemetery, the knocking sounds coming from the wall of this house or that, the boot steps walking down the sidewalk." But nothing seemed to change. Finally, the old man said, "I can show you exactly where you can find Samuel Jones' grave. But it'll cost you." The man was thinking to himself, with 5 men there at $10 apiece, he'd be all set for drink for at least a couple nights. And so he convinced him, $10 each. That's it. That's all I ask. $10 apiece, and I'll take you to the very site where you can find Samuel Jones' grave. The 5 men agreed, each giving the older man $10. And they went off on an adventure, going down several dirt roads until they came to a point where there was an open field with little more than an old ancient oak tree standing off in the field, its twisting branches reaching out to the sky. The men approached, and the older man pointed out a stone foundation that was buried somewhat in the grass and in the dirt. And he said, "This is the place where Samuel Jones would tie his hemp ropes, one after another, each becoming stronger with time, learning and plying his trade." He then pointed to the tree and said, "This is where Samuel Jones, during his life, would hang 41 men. All of them deserved it, you know. Each one had been a dangerous man, a murderer, a horse thief, a coward, a rapist. Each one deserved to die by hanging from this tree." It was at this point that Jared became very upset. They had given this man $10 apiece so that they could watch and find Samuel Jones' grave. What they didn't notice around him is that the ground began to writhe. It looked like there were snakes burrowing through the ground. The stranger pointed it out and said, "Look, you see that? It's something that's moving down inside the grass." Jared dismissed it and he said, "I'd rather get my $10 back. I mean, after all, we came here just to see a grave." The old man chuckled out loud and he pointed towards the tree and he said, "That rope up there, that rope has hung 82 men." It was at this point that Jared became upset and he said, "You told us that Samuel Jones had hung 41. And the old man laughed. 82, 41 while he was still living. None has ever been executed from this tree that didn't deserve it. He took several steps back, and the writhing on the ground became more increased. The stranger that was with them kept pointing towards it, saying, "Something's wrong. Something's happening. It's got to be an earthquake. There must be something happening." One of Jared's friends fell over from the force of something passing beneath his feet. The old man laughed again, and he says, "He always takes one. Always one victim that deserves it." Suddenly, the stranger that was with the four men jerked up off the ground. The noose was around his neck as it raised him up into the tree. The friends stared in disbelief. Even the old man seemed confused, and he pointed to Jared and he said, "I thought it was going to be you." The friends turned back to the old man, but he was gone. They looked back, and the man hanging from the tree, his face began to turn first red and then purple as he struggled back and forth across the top of the tree, struggling against a rope that hung him there. Finally, his kicking stopped. The friends didn't know what to do. After all, they had just witnessed the murder of a man. But as they watched the tree, it disappeared. So did the man. The old man had gone, and each one realized that they were out $10. But they had seen something no one else had ever seen. Something dark, something eerie. Who knows whether or not the story is true? We're going to leave that for you to decide. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Night Tricks.